without further ado, let's go with section 1. Everything here is algebraic expression, mathematical models, anything with real numbers. So a lot of this stuff is either Algebra 1 or especially Algebra 2 based. You will have a lot that, to be perfectly honest with you, a lot of what we'll do is going to be things that you've seen before, but for the most part, it'll get expanded, and some things will get expanded, some things won't. A lot of what we do here, like the first one is just a set. You've seen a set before. You've talked about a set. It's just a collection of objects whose contents can be clearly determined. So, here we have numbers. If we talk about like a set of students at Liberty High School, easiest thing to talk about as far as a set would probably be dealing with, like, if you're a freshman, if you're a sophomore, if you're a junior, or you're a senior. That would be a set of students, okay? Because everything has certain people in it, okay, and how everything works from there. So, in this case, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, basically a set of counting numbers. It just keeps going on with the 3 dots behind it. Just means that we're just going to continue counting. Okay, we're going to go to 6 to 7 to 8, so on and so forth. Okay. Whenever we talk about the elements, that's just whatever's in the set. Okay. If I would list out, like if we talked about the 4 different classes that are here at Liberty High School, the objects would be freshmen, sophomores, juniors, seniors. Okay. Now, if we wanted to expand on that and we wanted to go with all the list of basically every freshman and have its own set, we would go from there. Or every sophomore, every junior, every senior, then we would have like every name listed. Okay. They would be the objects depending on what we're dealing with, what we're talking about. Okay. What you're probably accustomed to, there's going to be 2 different types. There's going to be roster method, and then there's going to be set builder. Right? The one that you are probably more accustomed to dealing with is probably the roster method, where you just have the braces that indicate what's in the set. So, like if we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, okay, that's the exact example, or the terms or the elements, whatever you want to call it, that are in that set. Whereas with set builder notation, it's going to use a descriptor or some sort of wording that's going to say what we're talking about. Okay. To be perfectly honest with you, roster method is the one that students want to deal with because they don't have to write as much. Okay, I'll just tell you that right now. Now, it is one thing as far as set builder notation. You probably have seen it more in terms of looking maybe you could even look something like this where it's like X and like that. Okay, it's meaning the same. Now, in this case, it's talking about every single number, but this is something similar to what you would see. Okay. Now, it's not a counting number because we could have 5.5 here, but something along this line where it says X is and then whatever it is. Okay. You may have it like as an interval, something like that. Okay. So it's really just you're going to have an X and then it's going to be like a bar and then you're going to tell what you're talking about. Then the next 2 deal with basically things of a set. Okay, you either have an intersection or you have a union. I guess you really have the empty set, which we'll talk about here in a second. Intersection is basically like if you have two different things. Do you remember doing like Venn diagrams where you have the two circles? Probably in like maybe a science class, something like that, where you talk about two different things. If we just talk about, say, like the junior class, okay, and then we talk about anybody that is in, and I'll use like this, or anybody that may be like some sort of athlete, okay, or does some sort of extracurricular outside of Liberty High School, okay. How many of you in here are juniors? Okay, so a lot of you. Okay, how many of you are either, what's any sort of athlete? Okay, so what that would mean is like if we would have the two sets, okay, you would basically fill the gap. If we would think about it in terms of like a Venn diagram. So if I would have the two sets here, it would be everybody that falls in that overlap. Okay? So if these are juniors and these are athletes, the part in the middle is the intersection where you're both a junior and you're both an athlete. Okay? Now, at the same time, the union is going to be one where it's one or the other. So, an intersection is a very small, defined group of people where the union is going to be a lot larger because it's one or the other. Okay? Like if I would still go with, are you a junior or are you so how many of you are juniors and athletes in here? Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 7 of you out of 20 people. All right? Now, I know not everybody were juniors, but if we just say everybody was a junior in here. Okay? So 7 out of the 20 are junior athletes. If we would go with a union and say, okay, how many of you are either a junior or how many of you are an athlete, what's that going to do? It's going to open up everybody else that's either is an athlete or is a junior. Okay, so everybody gets picked up there. Now, if I do the same thing, but I talk about how many of you are freshmen, and so as far as this class is concerned, you are either a freshman and you are in band. Okay, marching band. How many of you are freshmen? Okay. How many of you are in marching band? None, because they're out at the field right now. Same way, what if I said, how many of you are juniors? I know it is, isn't it? Or even if I say, how many of you are juniors? There were what? If we have anything where it doesn't fit, okay, it's going to be what's called the empty set or a null set. Okay, it's really just a circle with a line through it. That means there's no sort of intersection that fits anybody in there. Now, even if I flip it and I say, well, if you're a junior or you are in marching band, okay, what's the problem with that? I'm going to hit every junior in here, right? Okay, so if I say, first hour, pre-calc with laws, you are either a junior and you are in marching band. Now, like I said earlier, I already know that marching band's out at the field right now, first hour. Okay, so I know I'm not going to hit anybody. Or Mr. Owen's going to be wondering why you're not out there. Okay? So, since nobody hits that overlap, there's not going to be anybody in there. There's nobody that fits that mark.